My name is Alexis Hunt. I am the manager for the Center for Black Literature and Culture at the Indianapolis Public Library, and it is my honor to welcome you to today's event in celebration of Black literature, the richness of Black culture, and the 7th anniversary of the CBLC. For those of you who are not familiar with the Center for Black Literature and Culture, also known as the CBLC, it was established in 2017 through a $1.3 million Lilly Endowment, and also through the support of our African American History Committee, which has been doing work in the community since 1978. It created the CBLC to preserve and highlight the contributions of people of African descent in literature, the arts, and culture. But the CBLC was also created as a space for windows and mirrors. So when we say windows and mirrors, it was created as a space for mirrors in order for us to see that representation reflected in our 24,000 plus material collection. So through our collection, we share robust experiences. We have a diverse array of experiences that we like to share with our community and that we also like to represent. But it's also a space of windows in terms that anyone can come in and engage and share in the beauty of Black culture, Black literature, and Black art. We strive to create a space that not only honors history, but inspires the future through programming, resources, and engagement. The CBLC is a space for community, storytelling, dialogue, and education. A space where we are all welcome to explore and celebrate Black culture and its profound influence on Indianapolis and the world. Before we begin the program, I would like to invite Mr. Gregory Hill, CEO of the Indianapolis Public Library, to share a few words with us.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us as we commemorate the 7th anniversary of the Indianapolis Public Library Center for Black Literature and Culture. My name is Gregory Hill, the CEO of the Indianapolis Public Library, and it's an honor to be here to kick off this event with you today. The Center for Black Literature and Culture is a cornerstone of both Indianapolis and our library, honoring the rich legacy of Black authors, poets, scholars, performers, authors, and activists who have inspired and challenged and enlightened us. The Center for Black Literature and Culture also serves as a dynamic space that embraces and shares the living history unfolding around us, welcoming today's authors, creatives, leaders who contribute their talents and voices. As we celebrate our anniversary, it's important to recognize that the center is more than just a physical space. It's a welcoming, inclusive environment dedicated to honoring the rich and resilient heritage of those with African ancestry. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge Alexis Hunt, our CBLC manager, who has done an outstanding job in fostering a space where people from all walks of life can connect with the vibrant history and culture of Black communities. A round of applause for Alexis. We are deeply grateful to everyone who has helped make this event a reality, including our library staff, guest speakers, authors, and artists who are making today truly memorable. I'd also like to echo Ms. Hunt's thank you to Don and Angela Woodley and friends of the library. The fine programming like what you experienced today is made possible by the generous gifts to the Indianapolis Public Library Foundation. May the stories, ideals, and people you encounter here today inspire you and open your mind to new perspectives. Enjoy your time at the CBLC, and I encourage you to return often to explore more of what we have to offer. So thank you for being here and for sharing this special occasion with us. Thank you.
I'm thrilled to introduce our moderator and host, Dr. Carlotta Berry. Dr. Berry is a renowned professor of electrical and computer engineering at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, a leader in promoting diversity in STEM fields, and a passionate advocate for equity in education. Her expertise in leading conversations and her commitment to fostering inclusive spaces make her the perfect guide for today's event. And last but certainly not least, we have the pleasure of welcoming Tia Williams, an award-winning and best-selling author known for her compelling novels that celebrate love, identity, and Black womanhood, themes we express today. Her novel, 7 Days in June, captured the hearts of readers worldwide. We are excited to hear her insights on the power of storytelling and community. Her latest best-selling novel, A Love Song for Wiki Wowdy, was named one of the year's best romances by the New York Times and Amazon. After the keynote speakers portion, there will be a 15-minute Q&A for any questions from the audience. Following, we also have a special opportunity for pictures and a book signing with Tia Williams. We encourage you to take part in this opportunity capture moment, as it's a wonderful chance to connect personally with Tia and celebrate her work. Please feel free to meet us in the designated area following the program. But without further ado, I welcome Dr. Berry and Tia Williams.
I am a TikTok girly. I know everybody's not into TikTok, but your books are all over Black Book Talk, and that's how I learned about you. You get so much love there, so I'm gonna ask you some crazy questions. Are you on TikTok?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, so that's how I learned about you.
But I don't post. I don't know how to create a TikTok because I'm 49, but I love playing on TikTok. Like
Absolutely.
I have, my I have creators that I follow, and my For You page is, doing the thing.
That's exactly how I learned about you. And then I saw The Perfect Find, the movie. And then I also am now reading the book because, sometimes they match, sometimes they don't. So one of my questions is, how much does the movie match the book?
Have you seen the movie?
I have.
Oh, but you're reading the book
I'm reading
now.
the book now.
Got it.
I saw the movie first.
Okay, so
now
the movie first. Choices were made with the movie. I love the movie, but it's very different. Because when you have an adaptation, anytime you have an adaptation, things need to change because we're expressing the story through a different medium, right? So there are pieces about the story that changed. I wasn't in the writer's room and I wasn't a producer on the movie, but I love what they did with it. Sexy. Yeah. Keith Powers, am I right?
Yeah.
Gabrielle Union was just totally luminous, and Gina Torres was so good. But it's a really different story. Yeah. Like the characters are the same, and the general, thrust of the love story is the same, but there were a lot of structural differences.
So I read 7 Days in June first. I just finished that one and then went back to The Perfect Find. And it seems like you made a big shift in that one. I'm also going to read The Ex and No Diva. That's on my list. Was there something that changed in the way you wanted that book to present as opposed to the fashion focus the other two had?
So I come from a fashion background. I was a beauty editor at, remember print magazines? Remember YM and Teen People, and Essence is still around in print. Elle is still around in print. Glamour isn't, I don't think. But I was an editor at all of those magazines. My department was beauty, and we worked closely with fashion, but beauty and fashion were separate things. Fashion were the pages obviously about clothes and handbags and shoes, and then beauty was makeup, hair, skincare. And when you're writing about blush, which is really just blush, the call is to be as colorful and enticing and creative as possible to make the reader want to buy this blush that is the same blush that every brand has, you know what I mean? And so I really cut my teeth in, working in magazines, learning how to have this like almost fictional, creative, language. And so even though 7 Days in June, the characters aren't in fashion, if you read it, you can tell, I don't really set a scene without us knowing what everybody looks like, what everyone's wearing, what, the vibe, because I feel like it says so much about a character. The Perfect Find was really like ripped from the pages of my life. So it was very meta that it took place in fashion. So yeah, I guess with 7 Days in June, I wanted to focus on a different aspect of my life, which is being an author and a migraine sufferer, and at the time a single mom. So all of my books kind of focus on a different layer of my personality.
I think that leads to my next question. So I've written about 3 books, and obviously I'm always inspired more than I have the time to write. I read an interview where you said you have the same challenge with your daughter. I don't know if she's still 12, but finding
She's 16.
She's 16, so the article was old that I read. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I also have a 2.5-month-old.
Yeah, and I also have a 16-year-old. Oh, and the baby.
And the babies.
So that's the same problem I have. I have more ideas than I have time to write. So how do you, with your busy career and now the baby and your 16-year-old, find the time to get your ideas onto paper? Or computer maybe.
Yeah. You know what? It's like the same thing when people, like I'm in awe of people that work out. I'm just like, girl, you get up at what time to do what? Before work? Before chill? Like what? Or like you come home after work and you do this thing. Like, how is that just like spiritually possible?
Yeah.
You know? But for the people that work out, it means that much to them. It's like the air they breathe. It's their therapy. It makes them feel good, you know? And that's honestly what we do. Like, it's that important to me. It's the air I breathe. It's my therapy. It's the thing that I'm called to do. So you just make the time. And it really, unfortunately, is that simple and that hard. Like, if you care that much, you figure it out.
Yeah, I said that one time, is that when I don't write, my books start calling my name and I start feeling guilty about it. So I started writing romance because I really wanted to use my romance stories to talk about Black women getting into STEM or seeing more Black women in that field. What made you transition into writing fictional books?
So I always have. So when I was growing up, I knew I had 2 very clear passions: writing fiction and fashion magazines. And I was always clear, like from the time I was 9 years old, you know, that those are the 2 things I'm going to do, and I'm going to move to New York, and that's what's going to happen. And 2 weeks after I graduated from University of Virginia, I moved to New York and with my girlfriend, and started working a couple months after that as a beauty assistant at YM Magazine, if you remember, it's a teen magazine. And so, and you know, I also started to try to, I've been writing my whole life. But I tried to write a book at the same time, but I was like, I haven't lived enough yet. What am I writing about? Like, I didn't want to write about college. I felt like I didn't know anything. I was 22. Fast forward 4 years of living in New York. I am a beauty editor at Glamour Magazine, the first one that they've ever had. I had a lot of professional success fast. Has anyone seen or read The Devil Wears Prada?
Movie.
Yeah, that's real. Like,
Yeah.
as cutthroat and hardcore.
Your book actually is making me think of that a little. What's the character? Not Meryl Streep. What's the
Miranda Priestley.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It makes me think of that.
It was scary. You know, and it was pre-social media, so people could act any kind of way and they would not be held. Okay, I had an editor throw a bagel at my head.
Oh my God.
It was wild. It was a wild time. And I was also dating a charming psychopath, as you do when you're 25. And things got crazy in New York. So I quit my job. I put all my stuff in storage. I broke up with the guy and moved to Spain to teach English to 2nd graders for 6 months. And while I was there, I started rewriting the tragic romance I just had with this guy, but I made it so that it worked out in my favor. So he was a good guy, there was a happy ending.
This is sounding like Brian. I don't know.
Well, it's Accidental Diva, actually.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
that's Accidental Diva.
Yeah, and so then when I got back, I came back to New York after September 11th, because I was freaked out and I needed to come home. And I looked at my book that I wrote for myself and I was like, oh, this is the first book. This is it. And so I sold it. It was Accidental Diva. It was 2004, and so I've been doing both things ever since then. So there never was a transition to writing fiction.
It just happened.
Was, yeah.
I noticed that the authenticity of the experience, because I will tell you right now, engineer, straight, know nothing about fashion. But as I was reading, I was like, okay, I'm like really in the middle of all of this. But it also, just like you said, was sounding very toxic. You know, thinking about the book that I'm reading now, of course, Darcy, I think is her name. I was like, there cannot possibly be people this mean. But you're telling me that is the reality. So my books, I try not to make them too close to the people around me because nobody wants to be written about. But some of my girlfriends will read and go, this sounds like my story. Are you writing about me? And I'm like, not really.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you talked about you see yourselves in your writing, but are there other people around you that show up as well? Like in your life?
Yeah, but it's more like, what's the word? Like collages of people, you know, or like the mood of someone, you know. I learned a lesson very early about not, you know, really stealing from a person's real life. That's like a mistake that a young writer does, because you feel like, oh, writers write about what they know, and everything around me, it's like Nora Ephron said, everything is copy. Like everything around me is for the taking, but it's really not. There are some things that are sacred. So yeah, I mean, I definitely get inspired. 7 Days in June, my protagonist's daughter was definitely inspired by my daughter.
Is it your daughter's personality? Because I loved her.
Yeah.
Oh, she was so grown.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild because she's going to be 16 in a couple weeks, but she was more grown at 12 than she is now. Yeah.
I love that. I was going to ask you something else, and of course, I got sucked into the whole Doherty thing because I have one and I think about her. And I lost my question. Oh no, this is going to happen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Miss Tia. Let me think about what it was now.
Or yeah,
it'll come back to me. If there's something you want to share, why I think, what was my question? This is what I get for not writing them down. Bad professor. Oh, I remember what it was. I read an article where you talked about chronic illness and migraines. And that was an interesting part of the book to me, because you're right. I had never seen a book where the main character, Black woman, had chronic illness and was dealing with that. And that drew me in from the very beginning, because I believe in the very first pages, she's at like some kind of book club or something, and she's trying to cope with their conversation, but she was just not feeling it because she wasn't feeling well. So what made you finally or integrate that into your book?
I think I always wanted, so I've had chronic migraines since I was 9 years old. It's migraine every day. And I always wanted to write about it, but I didn't know how, because I write hopeful, sexy, you know, romance novels. And it's just not sexy or romantic, you know, to have chronic pain. It feels like a monster is chasing you through life that you can't get away from. And I don't know, it wasn't until I turned 40, I think, that I was like more comfortable with all aspects, not all, but you know, more comfortable with the less cute aspects of my personality. And it just occurred to me that, you know, I'd never seen this represented anywhere. And unfortunately, at the time, in real life, I didn't feel very worthy of love, because I felt like pain shaped like a person, you know. So I wanted to create a character who got the love that I so desperately wanted.
Well, I'm gonna tell you one of my favorite lines in the book was when the daughter, I can't remember her name right now, sorry. Audrey was talking to Shane and said, my mom really likes you. And I know that because she put on lipstick.
Yeah.
Because of her pain, her hands shake so much, she doesn't wear lipstick, and she put on lipstick for you. And I was like, oh, that is so sweet. Yeah. So one of the other challenges I have being taken seriously as a romance author is that as soon as you tell somebody you write romance, they look at you and go, ooh, because you know they're thinking like, you know, 50 Shades of Grey, this is gonna get raunchy. So I write under a pseudonym so that my students wouldn't find my books, and they found them anyway. And knocked on my door and it's like, can you sign my book? I was like, what you doing reading my books, first of all? So I've even had some colleagues who said to me, where are all the nasty parts? It's like, okay, can you read my book and not ask me crazy questions like that? So how do you make sure, if any of your colleagues, I don't know, or friends, take you seriously as a romance author and know that this is a legit genre?
I don't care. You know what I mean? Because who it's for will receive it and understand.
Yeah.
Because the romance community gets it.
Absolutely.
And anyone else outside of that who would like to get it, great. If you don't, it wasn't for you. I think it's weird that when people are weird about sex, that feels like a you problem.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe you need to read more books. You know, unpack that a little bit. Why are you so freaked out?
Yeah. Absolutely.
At the same time, I am also mortified at times by who reads my book. You know, like my daughter has been battling this in school since they all could read, because they'll go out and, her friends will torture her with, sex scenes. But the thing is, she's my child, so she doesn't really care either. She's like, get you some then. It's just, I grew up in a house where my mom was like kind of hippie energy. So was my dad. It was kind of a naked house, not my dad, but like my mom, I was very familiar with her boobs. Like, we all had the right words for the body parts. And when I lost my virginity, she sent me a $50 check. No one, to this day, we don't know why, but it was like a celebration. I'm not fussy about that stuff. And I feel like, there's no shame in it. It's something we all do.
Yeah.
And also, I think PWP, porn without plot, which is what a lot of erotica is awesome. I don't write that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I feel like a sex scene is a breathing scene. It's an eating scene. It's what we all do. And I feel like a good one is propulsive. Like, it's supposed to move the plot forward. It doesn't just drop out of the sky for, to tickle you. Yeah. Though it should. But it's a legitimate part of the story.
Well, with spoiler alert, I'm gonna try not to give any spoilers, but I think in 7 Days in June, the sleep room, which I had never heard of. Is that actually a thing?
Yeah. Not anymore. I mean, it's an extremely pre-COVID thing.
Oh, that totally makes sense now. Because I was like, you go in a room to sleep?
Yeah.
And they don't expect people to go in a room? Okay.
Right. Well, you're not really supposed to go in there.
Okay. So yeah, so that went through me because I was like, okay, that's interesting. And I read an article that said, so you write contemporary fiction and it has romance in it. Mm-hmm. So, and I know because you say if you're going to write, well, in my mind, if I'm writing a romance book, it has to have a happily ever after. Mm-hmm. And when I made it to the end of 7 Days in June, and then there was an epilogue. And so I was waiting because I'm like, what are we doing here? But like I said, I don't want to give any spoils away. But is that why? Because it was really maybe fiction more than it was romance, but it was kind of romance in it. Mm-hmm. I cannot think of one person I dated in high school who would come back 30 years later and I would ever want to date again.
Can you imagine?
No. And actually still talk to some of my high school boyfriends and I'm thinking, wow, what was I thinking? But I guess I was 15.
Well, your frontal lobe wasn't.
Yeah. I say that all the time about my students. Yeah. Oh, let me give them some grace. Their frontal lobe is not ready to 25. And that's all the way through college. Yeah. So there's no time in college are they ready. But, so, okay, that is great. I want to open up the floor, because it's not just about me, it's about you all as well, to ask Ms. Williams any questions. Do you have any? I'm going to come to you with the mic. Oh, yes, thank you for being in the front. My niece appreciate you.
Hello, and my name is Cleva. I want to first thank you for being great representation of Black womanhood, but that's not the part of my question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My main question is, I am happy for your success with the movies and the books and the TV shows, but is there any pros or cons, I should say, for having your stuff adapted into media?
Yeah, that's a great question. The pros is, okay, I'll start with the good stuff, is that it exposes your work to such a broader audience. And for me, for The Perfect Fine, it was on Netflix. Netflix is all over the world, which means that they know who I am in Bulgaria, which means that Bulgarian publishers want to do a translation of The Perfect Fine, which then means that they'll want to do the next book and the next book. And so what was so crazy, what I hadn't anticipated was that because Netflix is so far reaching, in so many of those countries, they then wanted to do translations. And so I have all these international editions of my books now, which I really doubt would have happened otherwise. Yeah, so that's really cool. What's a little weird is when you give your work over to a director's vision and it's not your vision. And Numa Perrier did a fantastic job. But the black and white truth of the matter is that I came up with these characters and, someone else babysat them for a while, and it's always like the first time you leave your kid with a babysitter, you're freaking out. So that's a little weird, but.
So how do they approach you? Is it Gabrielle Union read it? Because I think she was the producer.
Mm-hmm.
And
One of them.
One of them. And so I guess it became a bestseller first, and then maybe they reached out to your agent and go, we really want to adapt this for Netflix. Is that how that works?
That's how this works, but it works differently all the time. Like, sometimes you go into it with a film to TV rights agent and you're shopping your book around to get adapted. In this case, that's not what happened. Gabrielle Union was reading it on vacation and
That's
and
what I
came to
thought.
me.
Yeah. So 7 Days in June was a little different though.
Yes.
So that one was shot immediately. You kind of knew.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a series. So it's
Yeah.
going to have to go beyond the book, I would assume, if it's a series.
Well, yes.
Okay.
But they're stretching out the book for as long as they can. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you write that part, or somebody else takes it?
So no, I'm not going to be the writer, but I am an executive producer for 7 Days in June. So I'll have more. Yeah.
My name is Daniel, and I'm not a writer, but I do happen to know a lot of writers, particularly around my age group. I'm 24, recent college graduate. So I guess my question is, what would you tell like maybe a younger Tia Williams or a younger writer who's just like getting their start as far as, career direction, maybe, if they want to get into writing novels, or like where should they probably begin if they're interested in doing that?
Great question. I think practice. I think it's really important to understand the craft of writing. It's one of those things that just feels like, I write emails. I text, what's good? It's something that you have to learn. Like, you wouldn't just like fly a plane.
Yeah.
So I think, taking classes, reading a lot of books on writing really, really helped me. Stephen King's book on writing, it's actually called On Writing, is so good. Whether or not you read him, there's just a lot of great nuggets in there about writing fiction, if you're a fiction writer. Definitely study the authors that you love. I did that. Growing up, I did that all the time. I didn't know I was doing that, but I definitely was. I used to read books and just put the book right here and just type out paragraphs. Because they were just so beautiful. I wanted to feel what it felt like to write them. And what that's doing is teaching you structure and style and even just how to put together a paragraph, you know?
Absolutely. I actually ended up getting a writing mentor who was extremely blunt. That I was a technical writer and I loved writing. I've been reading romance since I was in high school, but I thought that meant I could just write fiction, although I knew how to write about engineering and robotics. And she was like, baby, you got jumping points of view. You're not describing the scenes. You're not, and I was just like, this is not just sitting down and making a story. There's actually the way you have to do the dialogue. There's a way, she can't see that. That's not in her head. Those little things, having to actually put yourself in that space is very, very important. But you're right, reading about it and understanding it's not as simple as, I got a great story and I got to tell it. You have to tell it in a way. I know that's one thing in your writing, and you mentioned this earlier, it is very visual. You're describing scenes. That was the one thing I would never do. I'm like, let them figure that out. They know what the room look like. How would they know what the room look like if I don't tell them? So getting a lot better about putting people in that space so they can feel what it's like. Like I told you at the very beginning, I was immediately sucked into, her taking her medicine and her having the migraine and get me away from these women. I was like, oh yeah, I'm there. I'm in the room with her. So that was very important.
Hello everybody, and Tia. So excited to be here. My name is Candace Wise, and okay. My question, I'm gonna start with a comment first, is the fact I got introduced to you or your work. My sister read the book of The Perfect Find. The movie came out, she said, you gotta watch it. I keep going back and forth, I need to go back and read the book because my first book of yours that I read is the love song for Ricky Wild, yes. And I totally love that book. And for me, I appreciate you for writing the book because not only, yes, the romance is there, but I'm also a sci-fi fantasy girl and being a Black woman. And I felt like the fact that you married the two, that supernatural piece to it. So my question to you is just about, you mentioned earlier that about your experiences. What parts of your own experiences inspired you to do that, or just how did you do that? Because that's not a genre that we see often at all. So I just appreciate you for having that. We did it as a book club, and it was one of our favorite books this summer.
Yay! Oh my God, I'm a big horror girly. Oh, but I can't write it. Every time I sit down to write something scary, it turns into a passionate, turbulent love story. I can't do it. I just can't do it. You can't get ahead of your style. You are who you are. It's just a lesson in you take yourself wherever you go. But yeah, so I wanted to, so I love vampires. I love Dracula. I took this Dracula course in college and I was like, why can't I major in this? Can I just be Dracula major, English minor? They're like, that's not, what will your job be? But, so I've always wanted to incorporate sort of supernatural elements in a book, but I'm not a romantasy writer. There's a whole genre of writers that do that brilliantly. I'm not a fantasy writer. Again, there's a whole genre of people who do that brilliantly. So the way I was thinking of it, so this book has a little bit of magical realism in it. So it's very grounded in reality, but there's a little bit of voodoo magic sprinkled in, not to give too much of it away. And so the way I thought of it was, I was obsessed with Game of Thrones. I am not about that fantasy life. I'm just not. But I loved Game of Thrones because I felt like it was at its heart a family dynasty saga with some dragons in the background. So for me, A Love Song for Ricky Wilde is a very me contemporary romance with some magic in the background. So I don't really feel like it's a genre shift. It's more of I added a little bit of seasoning. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi Tia, my name is Faith. Thanks so much for this opportunity. I first want to say thank you. 7 Days in June has had a huge impact on me. And I feel like the characters have stayed with me like long after I've read the book, just because of how like beautifully layered and authentic they feel. And so I know you talked about how you like influenced some of your like personal aspects of your life into the story, but could you tell us more about the process of creating them and their backstories? And a two-parter, will we see a little bit more of their story in your upcoming book about Audrey? Because I'm super excited about that.
Thank you for your question. So yeah, 7 Days in June was very pulled from my life. Well, no. Eva Mercy, who was the protagonist of 7 Days in June, was the bones of her are definitely me. Brooklyn, single mom, precocious 12-year-old daughter, Creole mother, though my Creole mother always wants it to be very clear that she is not that Creole mother, because that one is very toxic.
Yeah.
And she is not. So, you know, and then she was a migraine sufferer her whole life, which has defined so much of my life, my relationships, how I move through the world, everything. And so that was definitely not hard. It wasn't hard to come up with Eva because I walk in her shoes. Shane, though, the male protagonist, was totally made up. He was kind of based on some authors that I know, you probably know, I will not be saying who they are, but that I've come in contact with in the, you know, sort of Black book world. And it just always struck me how differently male authors are treated than female authors, especially when you're a romance writer, because men tend, well, the community tends to think that what we do is fluff versus what, you know, a Ta-Nehisi Coates does, you know, for example. I'm certainly not comparing romance with writing very serious and much needed tomes, you know, about war. But there's a place for all of us, and, you know, anyway, so when I was thinking of Shane, I was thinking of what would it be like for a romance girly to be in love with this, you know, very serious writer, and how that would, you know, what that clash would be like. And then also, what if that person was her great love from high school, a very formative time in your life when you're just trying to figure out, you know, who you are and what the world is, and then you're hit with this like massive love that maybe you weren't really ready for. What if he just showed up, you know? It was the whole like, what if Romeo and Juliet hadn't died? What if they had, you know, actually grown up and like had therapy and became like functioning adults, and then met each other again? Like, would that love still be there? Would it be weird? Would it just have been a fling and now, you know, they've grown out of it? So those are really all the things I was thinking of when I was writing 7 Days in June. What was the second question?
About Audrey's story.
Oh, yes. So I have a book coming out in May called what is it called? Audrey and Basher Are Just Friends.
Oh.
And
Is it young adult? Or?
It's young adult, and it's yes, it's YA, and it's Audrey 4 years later, 16. It's the summer after her junior year, and she realizes that she is like a model teen, you know, president of this, captain of that, you know, but she doesn't know how to have fun. So she hires the new bad boy to teach her how to have fun for the summer.
Is it romance as well, or just?
It is extremely rom-com.
Okay, good.
And you will see Eva and Shane and where they are now, all in the book. From Audrey's perspective, she thinks they're ridiculous. So, yeah.
I do have one question about the book, and maybe I missed it. Why did she change her name from Genevieve to Eva?
Just because like her childhood was so traumatic.
So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
but I
she
was
just
just trying
wanted
to disconnect from
a new start. Yeah.
Hi, so nice to meet you. I am a huge fan. My question is, how do you balance showcasing the experiences Black women face with celebrating their joy, beauty, and triumphs in your work? What inspires you to highlight these complexities? My first interaction with your book, I was literally on a study abroad in Finland, and I had got the book from the library, and I was like, I'm gonna read this because Book Talk had convinced me, and I'm just like, again, now I am a huge
Wait,
fan.
it was in the library in Finland?
It is in the library in Finland. Yes, it is. But I didn't get it from the library in Finland. I got it from the library here, but we went to visit the library in Finland, and your work was there. So, yeah.
How do I balance the complex? Well, I just feel like I just write about our lives, and that's just what they are. You know, it's never really a choice. Like now, I am going to write about what bums us out and what makes us happy. I feel like I just hope to reflect real life and, our full humanity. And we are all of those things. I always try to make sure the books are funny because I feel like nothing is just dark all the time. And if you're gonna have some dark, you've gotta have some light. And also everyone I know is hilarious. And so I feel like we have to incorporate some of everything. And when I was growing up, we didn't really see Black people living full lives in media. They were,
good time.
yeah, we had the Jeffersons and the Good Times in the 70s, and then in the 80s we had the Cosby Show in a Different World, but then we had, Give Me a Break, where, it was Nelma Carter taking care of this white family, or you had Different Strokes, where it was like,
But you talking about Willis?
these Black kids adopted into this white family. Like it was, everything was always like very white centered. And so you would just get slivers of Black personalities and not their full life. Either they were hilarious but nothing else, or they were very, sad, or they were magical Negroes, or they were, how long was Bad Boy? What was that? Cops? The Bad Boys, were you gonna
Years.
That was on for years, and that was all about, following Black criminals.
Yeah.
And that was teaching the country that, yep, you guys were right about them. Let's arrest them every Sunday with a really catchy tune, in the background. Like it just sucked. It was always like just one layer of, So yeah, I just try to make sure my characters are as full as possible, as interesting as possible, because we are all things. We are brilliant, we are dumb, we are silly, we are horny, we are dorky, we are, we're all of it.
I loved how socially awkward they were in the beginning. And then at the end, even Shane was like, I don't do interviews, I don't talk to people, I don't get on stages. And she was at the book panel, and the other guy, Kamal, maybe I don't remember the name, but it was just really like, you write romance novels. And there was somebody in the back dressed like a unicorn or something. And then Shane gets up there, and the one stories he knew were hers, which we think because it's about him. But I thought that was great because he's like, I don't talk on stuff like this, but I will talk about her.
Yeah.
So it was great. So I want to thank you so much. This has been a real blessing.